guys, hello, it's Skill Up here. I'm joined with some really fantastic guests today. It's a bit of a who's who of the sort of Division YouTube scene. Some fantastic guys that I can't wait to introduce you to, so I'm going to get stuck straight into it. First one, kind of the granddaddy of the Division scene, has been covering it since the minute it was released. It was announced, I should say. Please welcome Arekkz.
What's up, man? How you doing? How's it going?
Yeah, good, man. No, please. Thanks for coming back. It's been really awesome to... We had a great chat last time, so thanks very much for coming back this time. Another person that's been covering the Division since pretty much day dot and has just made some really fantastic, awesome, super high quality videos that have really had a huge impact on the scene is the gentleman I'm sure you all know, Mr. Marcostyle.
What is up, man? Thanks, man, for the compliments.
This is our first time doing a recording together, so I'm very glad we got the chance to do this. It's very exciting. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
And the last person on the stream is someone that has sort of kind of like burst onto the scene in the last little while with kind of just super awesome, fantastic, high quality theory crafting videos, just really breaking shit down and making it super clear in a great way. I personally watch every single one of his videos without fail. I can't wait for them to come out. Please welcome Breezypeazy.
Yo, how's it going?
Breezy, this is his morning in the States, so he's just woken up for this podcast, so thanks very much for making the effort, Breezy. Appreciate it, man. So today we just kind of wanted to have a bit of a chat about patch 1.2 and how it's landed, because obviously it was a really big deal and super hyped, and it's obviously, like any major patch, has a really big impact on the game. Some of the things I think have landed really well and some of them perhaps haven't, and there are some things that we're still yet to see, obviously, like the challenge mode Incursion hasn't been released yet, and there's some weapons in the game that we know are sort of tucked away in there but we haven't got access to. So 1.2's out. Really keen to hear from these awesome folk on what they think about it, how it's landed, and where to next. So maybe we'll just kick things off with general thoughts. Arekkz, for you, man, how is 1.2 landed?
So speaking generally, I mean, I have enjoyed a lot of it. I feel like it's going in the right direction. I feel like if you compare it to 1.1, I think they've definitely done a lot of stuff right. For example, there's a lot more stuff to do in PvE, which is great. There's, in general, like loot generosity is a lot greater. So a lot of things that people enjoy about the game is just better in patch 1.2. Of course, I still try and make objective that it's still a free update, so there's still going to be limited content. So it's not necessarily going to have everything that I would expect. But yeah, I feel if you look at it side by side with 1.1, it's definitely a really good improvement. I think there are some great changes, some great introductions.
Yeah, cool. And Breezy, what do you reckon, man?
What do I recommend?
No, sorry. What do you reckon, man? I apologize. That's my terrible... that's my Australianism, like, kicking in there. Apologies. What do you think? Apologies for that.
I'm extremely happy with the new patch. I mean, I don't think obviously everything is 100% perfect now, but I think everything's headed in the right direction overall. I think it's a good patch. I really like it.
Definitely. And Marco, how about you, man? What do you reckon?
I think I'm gonna have to jump on that same boat as the last two guys. I think the loot changes, especially, they've done a lot of good for the game. I'm not really too sold on the Incursion. I wasn't really too happy about what I saw there. It wasn't really that great of an experience. But I think the Dark Zone with the Division tech and all those drop rates and stuff like that has definitely been a big improvement.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can totally agree. I mean, for me, I was doing hard mode Falcon Lost, and just kind of sitting there thinking, man, 1.2, it's been so good. It's kind of like, it's a taste of things to come, though, in my view. It's sort of like you've sort of tapped into the direction that the game should be heading in, but there's still a lot more that we're still waiting for, and we're sort of like still building the skeleton, so to speak. Like the muscles and the skin are still yet to come, but I get the feeling that, yeah, cool, like we're really building the frame in the right direction right now. And for me, that's what kind of 1.2 represented. It was obviously not perfect, but it was really about the developers saying, yep, this is the direction we're taking the game, and I think it's absolutely the right direction that they're going in. So yeah, I've really been loving it as well. Really keen to hear your guys' perspective on one of the big ticket items that came out, which is the high value targets. Breezy, have you been doing much of those? What do you think of those?
I actually have not been. However, I think that they're really great and useful, right? Because, for example, you might not have all your buddies online, or it's something to do, something to work towards. For example, like I just started my Xbox account, right? So fresh character, fresh account, still gearing up, and I'm like, what are the ways easiest for me to, grab some gear? And it's like, well, if I don't have a full party right now, right? If I'm not streaming or something, even though you'd imagine I usually have a full party, I can go, grab some of the intel, and then once I get online, bam, knock out the high value targets and get a set item.
Totally. Get Lone Star. Let's be really specific. It's not like you're getting anything else from a high value target, man. It's going to be Lone
Hopefully
Star.
something good.
Nah, don't be ridiculous. How about you, Marco? Are you doing high value targets?
I've only done the couple of weekly ones. The Fallen one, I don't really remember the name too well. But that's mainly because I don't think the rewards are too great. Basically, the daily ones only reward you with Phoenix credits, and also we all know the Phoenix credits are really not that useful right now. You can't really spend them on anything that's good, so to speak, because a lot of the weapons, of course, they don't have good rolls, and the blueprints are not 240s. I think the activity in itself was a good thing to be added to the game for those that don't want to play in the DZ. But I think they should, take a look at the rewards.
Sure. Are you sort of? Obviously you weren't exploring the world before this time, and now you're kind of like, are you out? Like, do you actually enjoy being out in the sort of broader PvE world, or is it just like that doesn't really interest you, or because you sort of said you hadn't really played much of them, and is that purely because of the rewards, or the activity itself that you don't really like?
No, the activity was actually more challenging than I imagined. Of course, mowing down the NPCs to get the intel, that was rather easy. But actually trying to kill Felon, or whatever the final boss's name was, that was quite a challenge. I was quite shocked to see 4 of those big flamers as the first wave of enemies, only to be followed up by 4 more of those.
That was good. I really like that. Yeah.
It was good. It was more challenging than any other boss or farming spot in the Dark Zone, and that kind of surprised me.
Yeah, totally. And Arekkz, yourself, have you been doing these?
Yeah, I mean, I've done for the past 2 weeks. I've done them all the weekly ones anyway. I haven't really bothered with the daily ones. But yeah, I think it's a really good activity, especially given if you look back to say 1.1, a lot of the time people are like, how can I gear up because I can't do Falcon Lost? So now you have a means to do so. A source that does give you genuinely good loot. Okay, yeah, it's within one restricted pool, but it's still a set that you could use, right? And if you're one person that's like gear score 180 and you're looking to try and get above 200, you could throw in Lone Star and use it as an interim set and then get elsewhere and whatnot. I think it's a really good way to look around the world as well because, I'm of a similar mind. When the game first came out, I completed the story missions, basically spent most of my time in the Dark Zone or the Incursion, and then never really explored the world. So I found myself going back to areas thinking, I don't remember this place being here, which is really nice. I think the rewards for the time invested is still pretty decent. I mean, the fact you can get 240s for 10-15 minutes worth of work, I mean, that's not really bad at all. Plus the weapon skins, I'm a cosmetic person, right? So I love the fact that you can get all the cool weapon skins, and I still haven't got the Viper one, which is really annoying, but yeah.
Plenty of time, man. Plenty of time. Yeah, I mean, for me, I think one of the challenges that I find with it, because I overall really enjoy the experience, but I really hate grinding for intel. Like, I really hate it because I think it's just so face roll to kind of walk around and just shoot enemies that instantly fall over. And it was one of the problems I had with like the sort of end game in 1.1, because you kind of had this situation where you were doing hard modes all the time, and by the end you were so geared that you could just kind of like solo hard modes with your eyes closed, but you'd have to do it if you wanted those Phoenix credits, So I kind of wish that the experience would somehow scale with my gear or with the number of people, or I don't know exactly. I mean, I'm not proposing a solution to it, but I kind of just feel like doing that thing where I have to run around the map to shoot an enemy that just falls over immediately to get some intel to do some other stuff. That part for me is just a bit of a gap at this point.
Yeah, it's a bit. I know what you mean. It's a bit of a weird thing because I mean, there's the 2 trade-off sides, right? It's like you need some sort of gate or something to kind of slow you down a little bit. Otherwise, just if you could just go straight in and do a weekly high value target and get 240, then it wouldn't be much time. But at the same time, I know what you mean, because especially if you do, on average, it's 5 to 7 pieces per run in an area, and unless you get some from a drop from enemy, so it's a little bit limited. I mean, the way that I found that it was obviously a lot better is, I don't know what you've been doing, but I always run the intel with a team, right? So then you can have, and then only one person needs to actually buy the high value target. So eventually, if we can all kind of all get to that state, and we actually tested out as well. I mean, it doesn't seem to save much time, but we actually tested out kind of placing people in strategic places around the map to the point where you have one person that just never leaves the safe house. So he just starts it, people complete it, and you hand it in. You get lesser rewards, but you can kind of do it at a slightly faster rate. It's really not much in it. It saves you a few minutes, but I know what you mean. It's not. I mean, gathering intel isn't the most exciting thing. I mean, maybe going forward they'll also do it so that maybe you could kind of do, or maybe the sensible thing would have been you do daily high value targets without intel, and they give you intel.
Yeah,
and
that would have
then
been great.
you then save it for weeklies, right? Because then it also incentive. Because I mean, as Marco said, you don't really bother doing the daily ones because a lot of the time you don't really need Phoenix credits, right? So it would be kind of an interesting sort of link to then say, right, do your dailies so you can do your weeklies. But yeah, I mean, either way.
I think a lot of the incentive for those that intel was also to explore more of the PvE area. That's what people have been asking for, because of course we have such a big world, and basically we only spent 90% of our time in 25% of the area, which is then the dark zone. And having all those enemies all around the map, that of course gives the incentive to walk around and explore a little bit more of the map, which is, I guess, what they were trying to achieve with it. But I like your idea though, doing daily activities to then get ready for the weekly one. That's actually a very good idea.
It's really good. Really like it. All right, so high value target sounds like a bit of a tick. Everyone seems to like those, so we can tick that one off. What about the Incursion? Obviously, that came out with a fair amount of hype behind it, like all Incursions do. And I mean, speaking from my personal perspective, it was over a little bit sooner than I had anticipated. Anyone that watched my playthrough of that would have seen my surprise at that. I think it was kind of like people were like, I remember it was kind of like, Incursion's out on Twitter, let's go, and then 12 minutes later, Incursion cleared,
One of the funny things, someone tweeted me a picture, because I tweeted out when I completed it, and it was literally the official Division Twitter account was like, Incursion's released, and then my tweet above was like, I completed the Incursion. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah. So what do we think of it though? I mean, because obviously it doesn't have to be super long to be good, but I mean, did you guys actually enjoy it? So Breezy, what did you think of the Incursion?
So I did enjoy it. And I think that they went the right direction about it. Like, obviously, it was significantly easier and way less time, right, to do than Falcon Lost. But before it launched, the immediate thing that was just going through my mind is, if this is another hour-long mission, something that's crazy hard, and the Dark Zone is dropping all of the best loot, why is anybody going to bother wasting their time unless there's something you can only get here? And well, they made it 5 minutes long, and it doesn't have the best rewards, but they made it as something that, well, there is actually a reason to do it over the Dark Zone. So it's a different way to kind of balance the loot of the different places. But overall, I think what they achieved was they made it so now at least you have a reason to go in instead of just the Dark Zone. So from that perspective, I think it was a success. Although, of course, like anybody else, I would have liked to see it be balanced around the fact that it's an hour-long, challenging, it's really fun, really, yeah.
Yeah. So what were you sort of hoping that was more of a raid-style activity like everyone's always been hoping for from forever since the Division was announced?
Always.
Yeah, totally. It's definitely a bit of it's on everyone's wish list, and it's one of those things that I think about, where will this game be in 2 years' time or whatever, and that's absolutely the number one thing, these incredible multifaceted raids and the like that we've sort of come to experience in the likes of World of Warcraft and any other MMORPG that you've played, or obviously Destiny is the other really good example of fantastic raids, but yeah, they're just not there now. And I think one of the challenges that I had with the Incursion was I don't like that it's called an Incursion, because this is a mission. It's a mission like any other, and if you're going to call something an Incursion, it has to be structurally different in order to be called that. You know what I mean?
I completely agree. Yeah,
there's no confusing a WoW raid or a Destiny raid with a mission or a quest. They're totally different experiences. So I don't like the kind of rebranding of a mission to be something larger than it's not. Even if you give it a really hardcore challenge mode and you give me a special weapon at the end, it's still just a mission. So I think from that perspective, the whole movement towards raids and the like really can't come soon enough. But Marco, sorry, did you have other thoughts on the Incursion? What did you think?
No, I think what Breezypeazy said, he said it was really easy and fast. I think that has partly to do with the fact that we have much better gear now, of course, because when we were going into Falcon Lost for the first time, we didn't have gear set items, we didn't have all those strong items yet to back us up, so obviously it was going to be a lot more difficult. But I think the problem with the Incursion right now is that there are no interesting gameplay mechanics. Kind of like you were saying, it's the enemies still die to bullets, and it's still just a gear check, so to speak. You either have good enough gear to mow the enemies down, or you don't. There's no special things that you have to do that you cannot find anywhere that's not already in the game. There's no enemies that have to be taken out in, let's say, specific ways. For example, they have to be put on bleed before you can damage them, or you have to activate this and that to disable their shield before you can damage them. That kind of stuff. It's really not what I expected for the incursions. If anything, I think that the mission General Assembly, the final one, comes closest to the incursion or to an actual incursion than any of the incursions currently in the game, because you have this mechanic where you have to activate the turrets. And although you can still shoot down a helicopter without doing it, thinking in mind that if the mechanic would have existed that you can only damage the helicopter with those turrets active, that would have been more of a final boss that I would expect to see in Incursion, and not. It's kind of what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, no, totally agree with you. Yeah, and sort of exactly what I was saying as well. It's just I think right now we can just sort of say that this is unexplored potential for the Division. The whole end game raid / proper incursion is sort of hasn't really hit its stride yet, and I think they're probably just building up towards something larger, and hopefully that'll come through in Underground. But I guess we don't really know what that's going to be yet, so we'll talk about that later maybe. So yeah, I mean, what about challenge mode though? Do you guys anticipate? Obviously, this is a little bit of speculation here, but are we anticipating anything different for challenge mode of Clear Sky? Are we anticipating it's probably going to be the same, just more enemies, more health?
Just more health.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like Falcon Lost as an example, right? I mean, it's going to be basically the same thing, right? But I think the important thing to think about, like when kind of looking at this incursion, right, is, I mean, yeah, I'm of a very similar mind that it's still not great. If you kind of step back a minute and you kind of like break it down for its components, I prefer it to Falcon Lost because it's an interesting concept that, while it's too simple, it's too easy. It's like they've learned a little bit from Falcon Lost. Like, people didn't like wave-based stuff, so they were like, all right, let's try something different. And the nice thing is that when you kind of get these sort of games, you often find that if you have an activity like an incursion, or you say take like a dungeon in WoW, they often kind of fall within a very particular framework, right? So it's nice to know that incursion doesn't mean 15 waves of enemies in a single room, right? Incursions can be different each time, which is cool. So of course that's good kind of potential for looking forward into the future. And you think about how it has changed from Falcon Lost. You like to think that if they can change it every single time, eventually maybe sort of 2-3 incursions down the line, we might eventually start being where we're at. Because I agree with you guys. I agree with what Marco was saying. I think it's all about mechanics. Like, that's what makes raids so fun. That's what makes. I know it's not a raid, and I feel like when we do eventually get them, I feel like incursions and raids will sit side by side. They're definitely two different activities. But I think it's nice to learn mechanics, because you don't want to have to shoot someone, because otherwise it kind of gets rid of the whole. There's nothing to learn. It's just, as you say, it's just a gear check. Am I powerful enough? Can I shoot them in the head? If my gear's bad, I'm going to be bad at the incursion. But then if you look at like Clear Skies, the actual, like the final circle, for example, it's a very, very, very basic mechanic of picking up a box and placing it somewhere. But it's it's kind of like incubation raid mechanics, right? So if you think that tenfold further forward, then yeah, I mean, I think maybe things will be slightly more exciting with a different faction, because it's interesting as well. You take something like Destiny, it's very easy to kind of build mechanics, because you can say, right, this guy's an alien, he's got loads of arms, there's a crazy mechanic. Whereas in Division, you're slightly more limited. I feel like they should probably doing mechanics with, say, the environment. Like, they don't use the environment enough. It could be things like, someone said before, I think it was Bife that said before in Falcon Lost, you're in an underground plant.
Do you think just because you mentioned that Destiny has so many different enemies and that the Division is more limited, but do you think that they couldn't push it further? Like, what do you think about?
No, I think they still could. I think they still could.
What about cloaked enemies or enemies with shields in the Division? Would you?
I mean, cloak work, and also think about like mechs as well. I mean, like it's like you look at some of the technology they've got. It's obviously future tech, right? I'm one of these people that I wouldn't really care where they take it, because I enjoy the game, and like. The notion of before, if you think about when we covered it before the game came out, it was obviously sold as this kind of realistic shooter. Now we actually play it, you clearly know that piling 30 rounds in someone's head, it's not realistic. So I don't really care. I'm beyond that now. I'm like, if they want to put in cloaked enemies, if they want to put mech suits in, I would be completely cool with that. I mean, imagine if Agent Bliss or Colonel Bliss was in a mech. Like, that would be cool.
I'd be down for
that. Exactly. I want them to push this further, to have all these crazy things, and then. maybe a lot of the complaints about enemies being too spongy will go away as well, because there's a reason that they're spongy, and that's because of the shields.
That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I think you see a challenge mode.
There you go.
Oh, go on. Sorry, go on.
No, you go, please. Okay. All right. I was going to say, I've always been very skeptical of this idea that like realistic equals, there's no opportunity for them to innovate. Like, yeah, it's a harder canvas for them to work with, but there's so much that you can do in that space, and even just in like current, you know what I mean? Without even pushing to future tech, there's just a lot of stuff that they can do in terms of enemy mechanics, but also, yeah, as you've said, environment mechanics. There's just so much that we're going to be able to tap into in the future. And let's just hope that Massive come to the table on that one. I'm pretty sure that they'd have some big plans for it. I remember when they first talked about this sort of stuff pre-release, they were talking about like 8-man content. Did I hear 12-man content as well? I remember hearing
they said 8-man or multi-group.
Yeah, 8-man multi-group content, So I guess that's the other thing. Like we have to assume that this game has like a 6 or 7 year life cycle.
They probably meant Dark Zone with that, to be honest. But
maybe.
No, because if they refer to multi-group, it means like groups linked, right? I think it's. I mean, when you say like the video I did right at launch, when you see that like PC UI has an option for additional groups in the thing that's like it's never used. It's obviously something. I think it's something we'll see eventually. Like you look at their DLC year 1 plan. I think the third DLC is when they're probably going to add in something bigger. That's my speculation.
Maybe E3. Who knows?
Yeah.
I feel like.
You go.
No, that's right.
I was going to say some suggestions I've heard are just around things like soloing incursions in terms of like applying a new reward or a new sort of set of requirements on incursions when you solo them. And I know Breezy, you did a solo playthrough of hard mode incursion, didn't you?
Yep.
Did you do challenge mode Falcon Loss as well? I was wondering if you did that.
I died on wave 15.
Oh, devastated. Yeah. So is that the kind of sort of like content that you would like to see from the game itself in terms of like encouraging more solo play on that harder content, or is that not something that you think, let's just leave that for people who like to punish themselves and die on wave 15?
I mean, I don't think it's something that they should focus priorities on.
Yeah.
I think it's cool when it's possible. It's definitely fun to do, but I could go either way. I mean, if they did, it'd be neat. If they didn't, I wouldn't cry. I'd be like, well, this is a team game.
Yeah, I ask because I think there's one of the issues that's popped out of the new Dark Zone, and we'll talk about that later, is that there's a bit of a lack of stuff for solo players to do now. If you want to solo the Dark Zone, it's really tricky to do that in 5.6. It's very high risk given that generally rogue groups are sort of scoping around, and I wondered whether or not incursions were perhaps a bit of an opportunity to give solo players a more opportunity to do stuff that's hard and really tuned for them, and it really gives them a good ladder to climb without being forced into the Dark Zone, which can be a really, really hostile place in there. So I guess this is maybe just a neat segue for us to maybe talk about like solo players and what that experience is like. And we'll talk about the Dark Zone a little bit more as well, but like what is it like to be a solo player in the Division at the moment? Like, is this game for solo players at all right now, or is it like what do people think about this? No, Marco, what do you think? Tell us, man.
Absolutely not.
Why do you say that, Marco?
I think that of course the endgame activities, the incursions, which are supposed to be the endgame activities, challenge mode for missions, that's all for men. That's all for 4 players. Then we have the weekly high value targets, which you can get 240s for. I don't think they're really soloable if you're not already at that level where you have all those 240s. In which case you would have already had a squad. And then the Dark Zone is okay until you get to the 200 plus bracket, and there it's just brutal. Not even because the players there are so well min-maxed and so good at the game, but also because the enemies basically just one-shot you if you do not have over that 250,000 toughness or something. It's ridiculously hard, and I think that it's just not doable for the solo player. But my question that I have for you is do you think that this game should be more tailored towards solo play? Because I honestly don't think that should be the case, because it's such a squad-based game.
Yeah,
they're already putting so much resources in making sure that solo players remain, decent and valuable, because everybody can reach the armor cap, everybody can reach the crit cap, everybody can kind of be this jack of all trades player if they focus their build in the right places. And they've made the game in such a way that you don't really excel in either a tank or a damage or a skill power build, because if you focus too much on just one of those, you will get punished for it. If you focus too much on DPS, you will get one-shotted. If you focus too much on healing, you can't do anything.
Useless, yeah.
You still get one-shotted because you don't have any toughness. And if you have a lot of toughness, then you can't do anything else but healing yourself, and you don't do damage. The best build in the game for everybody is to, have a balanced build, be the jack of all trades. And I think that because the game is designed that way, solo players can still do stuff, but I don't think that the game should be more focused towards that.
I don't know.
I think they should expand on roles.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between sort of like mechanical design and sort of like end game quest design. Like, I agree with you in terms of the way that abilities are set up and builds and these sort of things. There's a lot of versatility for solo players to sort of function quite well in terms of they can be quite self-sufficient. But I think that the way that end game activities are structured right now just don't give solo players a real space to sort of just be and just enjoy. Obviously I played something like Destiny, I've always played Destiny. I've just taken little breaks here and there. And I think that strikes a really great balance between really challenging endgame content as well as solo opportunities. So like you can always do your bounties, and that will get you sort of like legendary marks that you can use to purchase weapons or stuff that will be upgrades. Or there's PvP, and it's real PvP. Like you can solo queue into Crucible, and you can just, have a few hours of fun there on your own. Those sorts of things don't exist right now. Solo content in the Division is just generally way too easy, or it's impossibly difficult, and there is no like fair PvP environment where an individual can just go in there and just test their mettle on their own and be judged on their own merits rather than be reliant on their team. So I think that there is a definite need to focus on this, because I would have quit Destiny long ago if I couldn't play solo because all my friends quit, you know what I mean? And I'm sure that a lot of people are in that boat with the Division now, where they really love it, but they're just struggling to find groups that they can regularly play with.
I think it's important to cater to it in the right way, because I think it's one of those things where, like, I appreciate I'm not necessarily always the greatest barometer of this, because I have a ready-made team for everything I do. So I can appreciate when people speak in my comments, for example, they'll be like, it's fair enough for you because you can call on your team when you want, but I don't necessarily always have a team. So I can appreciate maybe I don't necessarily fully understand it from a completely solo player. I've run solo in the dark side, I've done things, but I feel it's important to cater to solo players, but in the right way. Like, not every activity should be doable solo, in my opinion. Right? I feel like you look at, for me, like I would, like when an Incursion first came out and someone was like, I can't do it solo, I'm like, you shouldn't even be trying it solo. I mean, like, if you can do it, I mean, obviously the fact that Breezy's done it, that's super cool, right? And you look at like World of Warcraft, for example, like raids, they're not in any way designed to be solo. There's always that crazy player out there that finds ways to do it, and it's super impressive. But generally speaking, when you look at like the ultimate endgame activity, they're designed to be team-based. And I can appreciate that maybe, going and using matchmaking isn't always an ideal experience. I've heard of the horror stories of you get to wave 15, someone kicks you out, they invite their mate in. It's a really, really bad experience. And again,
that's really
and again, like, if I don't experience that, because obviously I'm playing with my team, so that's fair enough. But I think it's important to have like a mix of both. Like, I feel maybe high value targets should maybe be structured in a slightly better way so that they are basically the solo activity, because I've heard from some people where they were like, it's kind of hard to solo because they struggle to kill the enemies in the 10-minute time limit to get the boss to come out, because obviously they're not fully geared enough. So
true.
I feel like, there should definitely be things like bounties, targets, maybe some sort of activity that solo players can do. But I think, it's definitely important for people to realize, and I appreciate, there'll be disagreement with this, but it's definitely important for people to realize that you just need to go into some things knowing this isn't designed for a solo activity. Doesn't mean to say you shouldn't try it, but you just need to realize that you either need to find a team, use matchmaking, or just, there's got to be something else to do, because not everything can be catered for one person. If you do that, then you dumb it down. If they suddenly made it so every incursion could be soloable, then suddenly if a team goes in, they'll just ruffle stomp it, right? You'll just laugh your way through.
Absolutely.
So,
Breezy, you when you play, man, are you typically solo, or are you in a group, or like what's your experience with this?
I'm always in a group, but I'll say before I, got into the YouTube or streaming, I was a solo player. Like, really, every game I played, I just soloed. World of Warcraft, of course, was a different story when you are doing raiding, and I completely agree with that. That the end game content should not be soloable and should not be catered to solo players. If it's like a raid style thing, like this should have mechanic after mechanic after mechanic. It's just something that's really challenging but really rewarding. I do completely think, though, that there should be some kind of farmable solo thing, sort of like Rift, sort of like in Diablo, right? Something that might scale based on the amount of players that are in the team. So if you want to play with the team, you can. You can still gear up, and you don't have to matchmake if you don't want to. Or we were talking about like Destiny PvP, right? You can just queue up solo whenever you want and have some fun. You don't have to play with the team. But I think that should be separate from the incursions. You know, I think the solo player definitely should have a method to gear up where he's not forced to matchmake with random individuals and kind of be gated by them. You know?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I guess that's probably a good segue, because this is obviously a discussion about end game content and what's available to us. Ultimately, you know, the Division is a looter. The end game is collecting as much loot as you can to sort of build the right sort of builds for you. What are you guys thinking about the whole end game grind? Like, what do we think about the loot meta at this point? Is this working? Is this not working? I mean, I know there's lots more loot dropping, but I know Marco, for instance, has done videos about the chances that you sort of able to get the drops that you want, and you know, like it's a case of different activities drop different types of gear sets, and you know, DZ 1 through 4 drops lower level items than 5, 6, but it's harder to solo. Like, what are our general thoughts on how this is all working? Maybe Arekkz, did you want to kick us off on this?
Sure. I mean, I think maybe so. I think the generosity is definitely, like, you know, it's been tuned in a good way in, you know, 1.2. You look at like 1.1, you run around the dark zone, you basically, you know, if you ever get anything good, or I say no, sorry, if you ever get any decent-ish loot, it's invariably still not as good as what you've got from like an incursion. Generally speaking, you got to the point where in 1.1, you know, I would kill bosses just for the sake of killing them and getting money. I would never even, like, I would just leave the high ends on the floor. I would basically never even look at them, which is a really bad thing to do. I mean, it used to be a point where, you know, you see a high end and you used to have to run for it because you'd be like, holy crap, this is amazing. It's now kind of, high ends, of course, been replaced by greens, and even to a certain extent, when you see them, you're not exactly in a hurry to get to them. But I feel like generosity is in a good place. I feel like it's definitely, especially considering if you're a solo player, you go into 201, you go to 5-6, it will take you a little while to kill the enemies, given they're, you know, you're watching your back, you're making sure you're not getting run up on by rogues, and eventually when you kill them, at least there are better chances. You know, I have actually picked up some items in the dark zone, and I have actually swapped them into my build. So, I mean, in that respect, they're decent, but it's few and far between. I would say for the majority of the stuff I do still dismantle, I do still sell. So I feel like the quality in terms of gear score and where it's at, it's in a good place. But again, I mean, to your point, the chance of actually getting something that is of a good, you know, a good role, maybe the stats are good or whatever you want, it's got the right bonuses, still a little bit slim, but it's kind of always going to be like that, right? It's an RNG game. You look at, like, you know, you look at Destiny. I mean, the chance of getting like a god roll on, you know, a sniper rifle that drops in the Crucible is still few and far between.
But I think that in that instance, and not to get too much into Destiny, but the end game is built around the idea that you get an exotic sniper rifle that's probably going to do the job, or you'll get like there are generally very specific ways that you can get the right sort of items for your build. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of exotic weapons that do a fantastic job, and there's a lot more sort of predictability as well around sort of like arms day and vendor rotations and all that sort of stuff. So Marco, what do you think about this? Because I know you've done a video on this topic in the past. Like, what are your general thoughts on how this is all shaping up?
I obviously with 1.1, I thought there was no way that you could ever gear up. With 1.2, that has changed a little bit, but then after the first week of the 1.2 patch, the developers kind of went back on what they said with generosity, and of course nerfed a lot of the drop rates inside of the dark zone again. So right now it's a lot harder to get those sealed caches once again.
So? Did that happen?
That happened.
There was a nerf to drop rates in the dark zone after 1 week of 1.2.
Yeah, it was unlisted. Was not in the patch notes. So are many other things, just like crit chance stealth nerfs, that kind of stuff. Smart cover stealth nerfs.
Where did you hear about this? Because I personally have not noticed any reduction.
No, they haven't talked about this. But Massive personally doesn't really talk to me anymore because, of course, I've shown videos about exploits and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I still have a lot of friends that are like top 20 rogue kills and stuff like that. And Massive talks and plays with them a lot. Just to gather information about the game and stuff like that. And I also talk to those people, and they've told me that the drop rates have been stealth nerfed. And I actually released a video.
Are you saying that those guys spoke to Massive employees, and those Massive employees told your friends that drop rates have been stealth nerfed?
Yes.
Wow, that's big, man. That's big. You heard it here first, people. You heard it here first.
And also, not everything is like this guy talked to this guy, because of course that's a little bit vague.
Sure.
There's no evidence. But I actually released a video today that the crit chance has been nerfed as well. Like it used to be to where you could get 100% in combination with the pull savage and your own thing. Just of course, now it is no matter what it is, it's like 60. It is at 60. Sorry there. So that means that if you have a 20% critical hit chance on your character, and 40% on the maxed out pulls, you're sitting at the cap and it cannot go any higher. So that means that of course assault rifles are now doing a lot more damage because the bonus on the SMGs are not as good anymore. And a lot of people don't know this. They're still running out with Savage because everything is unlisted. But that's a whole other topic. We're talking about the loot drops. So the loot drops, they kind of nerfed those. They kind of went back on what they said. And right now it's kind of still, it's a little bit hard to get sealed caches. And then again, when you do get a sealed cache, you have, quite a slim chance to get the item of the gear set that you're looking for. And then that item also has to have good stats, and chances are still really, really low. I would like to see, some changes made to how the system works in terms of, more gear mods and less values baked into the item. But that's probably a change we'll never see because that's going to require
I've seen quite a lot of them still recently. I mean, I don't know when this
still a lot as well. Yeah,
but like every time I go on the dark side, I'm getting like 3, 4, 5, 6 like steel caches. A lot of the time it's green, yellow ones. I mean, okay, maybe I'm not getting the great stuff from them, but my dark zone loot. I mean,
the first week it's
all RNG at the end of the day. It's all RNG. Yeah. I mean, totally. And Breezy, what are you thinking about all this, man? Are you what are your sort of general thoughts on how the whole loot meta is shaking out right now?
Well, I think it's definitely possible to get upgrades now, right? Previous to this patch, like it wasn't possible. There was no, your chance was once to 4 times a week, depending on your characters in challenge mode incursion, right? That was it. And now it's definitely possible for you to find an upgrade somewhere. I'll say that people are farming Dark Zone for it. The days that I spent only farming, I got some gear. I don't think I've actually still gotten an upgrade to any of my sentries or strikers pieces in the Dark Zone. But I have gotten some, that were pretty well rolled. The days where I just decided we're not going to farm today, we're just going to kill other players and have fun and PvP, it doesn't matter. I think I like in a whole day I've gotten maybe like 2 green caches off of some, poor solo player or something.
That you just ganked mercilessly.
Oh, God.
It's like the Dark Zone just, it tries to be these 2 places, but I find if I participate in PvP, I'm not going to gear. And there's not going to be upgrades for me. And when I just focus on killing the mobs, it's possible now, which is good, but I feel like it's still the best place for me to like really hammer out my time well spent to get upgrades is to challenge Falcon Lost. Because I'm guaranteed, well, not guaranteed, but it's just, I don't know. I think it definitely got better.
Well, given the strength of those sets, they've retained a lot of strength going into that. They're still, very, very highly sought after.
Now,
there's
one thing I'd like to add to that as well. This is not official yet, so maybe we can cut this out if you don't want to have it in. But
sure.
I've been doing a lot of testing lately. I've crafted 10 guns each day, went to the Dark Zone, found the first 10 guns and extracted them each day. And from what it seems that specific roles and specific talents roll on specific days of the week. And this could be RNG, but
what is your sample size on this? How many?
Okay, so today
guns are we talking in total?
So today I crafted 10 first wave vectors, and I've gotten like the talent, or it was yesterday actually because it was very early today, and I've gotten the talent that you are closer to 10 meters, you do so much percent extra damage. I've got that 8 times out of the 10 rolls.
Okay.
I have got Forgiving. I've got it like 5 times. There are a couple of talents that are kind of in between. I had the talent where if you activate a skill, then critical hit chance is increased by so many percentage. I've had that only 3 times, but there are definitely certain talents that roll on certain days. And
Wow. Okay, that's interesting.
Uh,
That's okay.
yeah,
Look, I'm happy to
still
leave that
working
in
on.
because that's a really interesting theory. But we can cut it out if you like. It's totally up to you, man.
It's no. I think we should leave it in
All
because
right,
I
cool.
hope
It's
this will
in.
incentivize people to try
Check
it
this
out
out and
themselves.
check out this theory.
Drafting, yeah.
Wow,
But
that's really
my
interesting.
general rule of thumb, if you don't craft, any good talents on the gun, the first 5 tries, stop and try again tomorrow because you're not gonna get it today. And I can guarantee you that it works like that,
Yeah.
100%.
Wow. Okay.
But
there you
I'm
go.
not. I'll make an official video about it soon. I'm just not quite there yet with enough proof, if you know what I'm
Sure,
saying. But
sure. Well,
let's move on.
Definitely going to be checking that one out. That's very interesting. But maybe this is a good chance for us to segue into talking about the weapon meta. Yeah, I had heard rumblings about this crit nerf earlier as well, and I'd obviously now that you've done some testing on it, Marco, it's really interesting to know that that's been confirmed. What are your What are people generally thinking about the weapon balance at this point? Is it any different now? Because one of the things Massive had said was that we're going to give you tons of weapons, and you're going to be using them, and you're going to see that different weapons are stronger than others, and et cetera, et cetera. Is that the case, or is it really just the same as it's ever been?
I think SMGs are still really popular simply because people are still sticking with their really god-rolled vectors that they had before the patch.
Mm.
Although I do believe that assault rifles can be strong as well as shotguns now. It's just that both of those weapons are, they're a lot harder to use in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
But I definitely think I personally don't have that much experience with both of them. Because, as you might know, I've been running with a very high toughness and sticky bomb build pretty much the whole patch. So I've been tanking and just disrupting people, not really shooting that much. And when I shoot, it's mostly blind fire just to maybe annoy or maybe distract the enemies or something.
What
But
about,
I definitely think that assault rifles, shotguns.
Yeah, and Breezy, what about you, man? What are you using at the moment? Have your weapons sort of usage changed at all with the patch?
Nothing's changed, but I've definitely been on the lookout for an SASG for PvP. With the changes, Sentry's Call no longer applies to SMGs. I still think SMGs are incredibly strong, but that gigantic boost does apply to shotguns. And an SASG, right? It allows you to reload your full magazine, so you're not just, I didn't proc one is none on this player in PvP because he's really squirrely. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely looking out for that, and I think that has totally become a viable option. I think Predator's Mark is still more powerful on an SMG than it is on an assault rifle.
Yeah, exactly right. Completely agree with you on that one. Which is ridiculous, given that set specifically buffs assault rifle damage. And even I did tests as well. Even when I had assault rifle gloves on, I was still getting more out of my bleed with my SMG than I was with a really strong rolled AK. So that's a bit of a problem. But anyway, I interrupted you. Please continue.
Fire rate.
Yeah, well, the fire rate is still on AK is really low, and SMG is still really high. But because you're getting so many crits on your SMG while you're firing, right, you're just getting more damage out of the bleed because of those crits. That was ultimately what it boiled
and you
down
apply
to.
it faster, of course, because more bullets go out.
Yeah, that's another thing as well. Yeah. So, and what about you, Arekkz? So your weapon, because I know you're the only one of us that plays on console as well, and I'm wondering what your perspective on the weapon balance is, because I think all of us are just like marksman rifle for days back in the day.
Point and click, right?
It was exactly the point and click, and I know it was quite different for console players. What about yourself? Has it changed for you?
It's funny when you talk about console as well. Everyone always says in comments like, "Why do you shoot in the body?" I'm like, "Do you realize how much easier it is to shoot in the body when you use a controller?" No, I think
console failed.
I just love control. I can play mouse and keyboard, but I love the control power for this. But no, I feel like for me, I feel like they kind of approached it the wrong way. Because the thing is, as you say, like everyone's got their really nicely tuned vectors, or they're really nicely tuned, or like day one of 1.1. Like I crafted the AUG day one of 1.1. It's not got a god roll. It's got some decent-ish perks on it, and I basically haven't changed it since, because the problem is, no one's really got a reason to change it. Like they can say, for example, we're going to add in some new weapons, we're going to add in some new gear sets, and it will change it. But if you just know that like SMGs and marksman rifles are still really dominant, why do I want to bother changing? So I feel like the way they need to do it, like realistically, is instead of them saying we've added a load of new weapons for you guys to test out, go and have some fun. Like if you think someone's going into the dark zone, they think, all right, there's a lot on the line here. I could die because it's really hard now because there's level 34 enemies. I could get run up on by rogues. So I'm not gonna risk maybe taking longer or getting killed because I'm using an assault rifle, so I'll just stay with what I know. What they should do instead, they said before the patch came out that we're going to analyze some data for a while and then we'll put a weapon balancing pass on. What they should have done is just put on a weapon balancing pass that they feel fixes the current meta of the game, and then if it in turn nerfs SMGs and suddenly they become rubbish, then people. I'm not saying they should do that. I'm not saying they should make SMGs rubbish. I love them, but what I'm saying is if they put in a patch that then changes the way that things are, and suddenly people start to realize they're like, oh, this SMG doesn't feel so powerful, then people are forced to go and look for other weapons, right? And I think then when you start to do that, you really start to experiment. So for me, like I've got some assault rifles, and there are some that I've hung on to. Like I picked up a foul the other day. I'm on the lookout for an LVOAC because I do really like that one.
Yeah, they're great. They're really good.
Yeah, but I still just I still think to myself, why am I going to bother? Because my SMG rips through enemies, my marksman rifle, my M1A, rips through things. So there's just not enough incentive at the moment with these, and also I don't see enough new weapons, to be honest. So there's a couple of new archetypes, or not archetypes, sorry, a couple of new types or brands in there, but beyond that, there's not really anything that I've seen. So I feel like it's not truly showing itself at the moment. Yeah, I know that shotguns are still slightly more viable, as are assault rifles. LMGs are a bit of a joke. But yeah, I feel like we're not going to get it the right way until
I can't wait for the day for LMGs to become good. They feel so good when using them. It's just they don't hit for anything.
Especially when you have to. I was doing a video on the Hungry Hog. I was like, let me just go and test this out. I went to the Incursion on my own. I had 200 bullets on that thing, and I emptied a magazine in an enemy. I'm like, why are you not dead? How is this possible? It's 200 bullets.
Armor bar is nearly gone.
Maybe 1% extra damage per hit or something.
Well, that's it exactly. Those sorts of things. I think what's really exciting to come is that I'm pretty sure they're going to use. I'm just guessing. My guess would be that they would use the expansion as a bit of a reset for weapon balancing.
I hope so.
And they could release a patch before then, but I highly doubt it. And in that regard, we're going to get more powerful.
The underground?
Yeah, underground. Yeah, I don't think there'll be another patch before then. Maybe there is, but I don't think so. No, but I think that'll be the reset button. So then there's more powerful weapons, and we're encouraged to leave behind our god roll weapons from the last tier. They can rebalance them across the entire category, all categories, all types, because there's actually so much.
Are you saying that you think that there's going to be another power increase? So higher gear score items, higher gear score.
I would be very surprised if there wasn't. I'd be super surprised because we're pretty much because right now we're all carrying around a lot of really strongly rolled weapons, and to go through another expansion cycle not chasing new awesomely rolled weapons, I think would be an issue. Plus, I honestly believe that the last tier of gear sets were a problem. In my view, they are too strong. Not all of them, but I really think they should be left behind because I think the philosophy of design that they applied in this tier of gear sets was really good, and I think the philosophy of design in last gear sets was just more power, and I don't think that's how they should be designed. So I think that if I was them, and this is just me talking, I would absolutely want to leave behind all of the god roll weapons that people have now, and I'd want to leave behind those gear sets because they're just really, really strong.
You don't want the new gear sets to apply. So what you're hoping for is that there will be new gear sets introduced, but that the older gear sets do not go to the higher level items. So we will not see level 33 and level 34 striker.
Yeah,
that's what you're.
I think so, because I think those, in my view, and a lot of people are going to hate me, I can already see the comments section filling up now, but I think just more power, shoot a target and deal more damage, I think that kind of sucks. Do you know what I mean? Or Sentries, obviously pre-nerf was a real problem, and we knew that. Tacticians is just more, it's instant fill up your skill power to max if you're running with a team. It's just so much power in these sets. Whereas I think with the new sets, I really appreciate their design because they're more power, but it's not crazy, stupid, over the top power, and it's power delivered in a different way. Highly situational, like Lone Star, which I've obviously done a video or 2 videos on now. I love that set because it gives me more power, but there's a trade-off in terms of I need to be out of cover in order to benefit from that. Predator's Mark, similarly, it gives me more power and it gives me the flexibility to deal damage when I'm behind cover. But that's obviously the trade-off as well in terms of the power gain on that isn't gigantic. Hunter's Faith and Final Measure, I think we have a broader discussion to talk about with those sets in terms of their issues.
Arekkz has done some testing about the Hunter's Fate, right?
And I know Breezy.
Hunter's Faith, I haven't done too much. Although no, I've got a friend that's been running Hunter's Faith. The interesting thing with that is Hunter's Faith. That's the armor one, right? I just remember.
Hunter's Faith is the armor one, yeah.
Yeah, Hunter's Faith with an SMG is hilarious because if you do it in not against level 34 enemies, because this is the weird thing as well. Level 34 enemies just make a mockery of basically any kind of build. It's you want to be a tank, lol, have fun.
You just die.
But if you're against to a certain extent, even with 500k toughness, you will still get destroyed to a certain extent. But
what about? Yeah, okay, go on. Never mind.
I mean, no, yeah, we can bounce back on that afterwards. I mean, the point with yeah, I mean, Hunter's Faith is a funny one just because of like how quickly you can refresh armor and stuff, and like in like evenly leveled PvP engagements and also like average PvE encounters, you can actually remain pretty tanky with that thing. But I was actually want to kind of jump back on what you were saying, Skill Up, because I'm of a very similar mind. You know, as someone that used to play World of Warcraft a lot, I'm very familiar with, you know, you play an expansion, you you get to your end game, you get to the top of your end game, you're wearing, you know, fully spec'd raid gear, and the second the next expansion comes out, your raid gear is then replaced by average random crappy blue gear that you get that drops there. It's like suddenly, you know, the thing that you've worked and grinded super hard for is now not as good as like an average piece that you just got from killing a mob. And I feel like it's the weird thing with Division is it's hard to balance that as well, because the expansions have come so close to each other. You know, it's like, all right, 1 month you have 1.1, you get your 4 new gear sets, and you know, if for an average player that isn't playing every single day, like all day long, then it's going to take you a little while to get a complete set. If by, you know, if it, let's just say, for example, it takes you 3 weeks to get it, you know, and then a couple of weeks after that, the next expansion's out. If they then made that gear set useless already, I feel like that's a weird place to be, because it's too short time. You know, were there, say, like 2 or 3 months between each expansion, then you can kind of like get away with it more. But I do agree with you that I've kind of forced myself this expansion, because I ran with a striker set for a long time, striker sentry, and I was like, you know what, I like these new sets and I want to make them work. So I've kind of been forcing myself to use them. You know, I'm currently turning my Predator set into my PvP Dark Zone set, and testing it out and rolling it as like my tank bleed set. I'm also testing out my I really like Lone Star just because it's really fun to use. So I'm
super fun.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to leave my stuff behind. But yeah, I agree that like when you have like a sizable expansion like Underground, it's, you know, it's been like a good enough period of time where I feel like, yeah, you should say, you know, maybe they increase the base level capacity, you're forced to then go up again, you add a new tier of stuff, and then everything has to be left behind. Sure, people will be annoyed when they've worked super hard for stuff. It happened in Destiny as well. You know, you have like all these guns that people have worked really hard for in the raid. They finally got their drop, and then it suddenly becomes useless. But it's the nature of these types of games. Yeah, you know, as someone that's played these games before, I'm used to it.
If you don't want that kind of thing, you're really playing the wrong game. You know, it's always about that chase for the next tier. I mean, Breezy, are you like your sets? So what are you? Because I know you test across all different sets. Have you sort of changed in your terms of your favorite set? Like, what are you currently using when it comes to those at the moment?
Well, nothing for me has changed when I'm trying to kill something fast, right?
Is it still 3-2-1?
Yeah. Well, I mean, with if these new crit changes are a thing, right? I haven't tested that, but I have heard about that you're basically capped at 60. That does mean changes for SMGs. That makes other weapons, you know, more powerful, because that 20% you're getting on the SMG really isn't right. If you can hit 60% with your pulse and you're using something that hits harder than an SMG at a range, like an assault rifle or something, you know, that changes everything.
Absolutely.
Everything.
But as far as like the sets are concerned, I mean, I completely agree that I would like them to go away. I don't want to see sentries again. I don't want to see strikers again. They're like, how do you compete with, you know, all this extra damage? There's like no amount of creativity that you could do unless it's like, you know, like I said, 10% proc on bullet to drop a meteor from the sky. Or something.
You love that example. That's your dream, isn't it? They need to just add that to the game, and like they need a public test realm, and they need to have the breezy meteor just like coming down, crashing everyone's head. You know? Like I would totally sign up for that. So
that is the best example I've heard so far.
I think one thing that we definitely need to touch on, because I know we're running out of time, is PvP, because I think probably the biggest change that I've seen to this game in patch 1.2 has just been the evolution of the PvP meta, and how much that has solidified in the last few weeks in relation to toughness and the like. So I'm really just interested to hear different people's views on all that, because obviously it pisses a lot of people off, to be frank. No one is really talking about how fantastic PvP is in the Division at the moment. So Arekkz, did you want to maybe kick us off on that one? What do you think of PvP in the Division at the moment?
It's an interesting thing, because like, I'm in the 2-1 bracket, right? So like PvP to a certain extent it's always disrupted by the fact that invariably in some kind of encounter you'll accidentally run into a level 34 enemy and you're like, crap, you know. So it's like you never kind of have a clean player on player engagement, right? But I mean, I don't know, it's a weird thing. I still enjoy it. My build has changed slightly. I used to like pre 1.1, even in 1.1. I was very much, I mean, obviously people have different opinions. I was very much a believer of tank is the way to go. It's what I used to run in my team. It's what, you know, I would always run up and I would basically out-survive people with higher damage, and then invariably that was the way to win, right? That's what I used to run. And then ever since an Incursion came out, and I was like, I can't tank stuff, I kind of restructured my build. And then since then, I've kind of, I don't know, I mean, I still enjoy PvP, but... And I like some of the changes they've added to the Dark Zone. Like I feel like the cut the rope now suddenly adds. That's one of the things I feel like was missing before, because when it was 1.1, we used to roam around the Dark Zone and basically no one challenged us, right? And then now suddenly it's a point where you've added this whole kind of untrustworthy segment to the Dark Zone. You can now no longer, get to an extraction and feel safe for a little bit or anything. So every time you're looking around the corner now. But I don't know. I'm not too sure about PvP at the moment. I feel like. It's hard to measure when you are also in like an environment when there's so much else going on, right?
Yeah, totally. And Breezy, those days when you said you just like smashing out PvP, just mercilessly ganking poor unsuspecting people carrying sealed caches. How are you finding PvP on those days, man?
I don't like incendiaries. I don't like shock turrets. I mean, I think the PvP is very fun. I've had some amazing fights where like that wasn't the end all. If you got shocked, it wasn't the end of the world. I actually ran Immunizer against like a group, 4v4s, and that was really, really fun. Because you actually had to like hide it, right? And then, the enemy would try and flank you, put a shock turret behind you, and then they try and focus fire you down. Because with triage and all the heals that are going down on the ground, it's like impossible to literally kill somebody while they're just infinitely healing in front of your face, right? But like that portion is really, really fun. I think it would be more fun if that was just not in the game, because like if I die, I'm perfectly fine with getting outplayed, with getting focus fired, with getting wrecked. But when I'm like forced to just, all right, well now you just have to stand in place for 3 seconds, and if they do enough damage, that's how you're gonna die, right? That's right. It kind of feels bad.
Yeah. So you're sort of saying that there's like an issue with the abilities and the way that's designed.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, totally. Marco, what about you, man? Because I know you're one of the first to come out with a video on the Tanktician build, made it very popular after that. What are your views on the meta at the moment?
I don't think there's necessarily something wrong with the meta. I'm kind of on the opposite of where Breezypeazy is. He really dislikes shock turrets and incendiary bullets. I don't necessarily dislike them for what they do, but I dislike them for how they're implemented. I really feel like that there should be something done to incentivize players to use cover more often. I've already given the example in the past that maybe you cannot be put on fire or on shock when you're in cover, so you're basically invulnerable to crowd control in cover, which would make cover a lot more viable, would make give a lot of options for cover-based gameplay, and in return, they should add a lot more options to stun or put someone on fire that comes from the skills and not for fire bullets. Because the thing with fire bullets is you're just adding annoyance on top of your damage, basically. And I think that players should be forced to choose whether they want to go with crowd control or damage, so that you can have a utility player in the team putting people on fire if they come rush at you, stunning people if they come rush at you. But then, it will also force players to stay in cover more, play more careful, play that strategic game that you're talking about. And I would really like to see that back. Right now, there isn't such a thing. I think there's, multiple reasons for that, because obviously cover doesn't provide anything except for, putting you into one position. You can still get stunned, stuff like that. And with the way that first aid works, running in circles and just getting the heal 5, 6, 7 times over and over again, to the point where you basically cannot die. I think that is just so broken. I feel like that is like half of the reason why people run in circles like that. I posted the gameplay video where we were fighting for 20 minutes until I finally died because I just kept running in circles and heals. It was it's not in a good place right now.
Exactly. And I think I don't like to be negative in general, but I have to say that like I really don't like PvP in this game at this point.
Exactly.
I think it's a horrifically imbalanced mess. It has huge potential, I think. The idea of like, 2 squads going up against each other, using abilities, like using cover, all that stuff. It's so awesome. Like I really imagined that while I was playing the beta. I'm like, man, how cool is it going to be when we're level 30 and we're just squaring off each each other down a street, and none of that has come to fruition though. It is this
Survivor
the what? Sorry.
That kind of stuff.
Yes, Survivor Link. The
Survivor.
fact that Survivor Link has not been disabled in the Dark Zone completely blows my mind. Like, for me, that is just utterly ridiculous. Anytime you're in a 4-man squad and you are able just to chain that shit, you know what I mean? The amount of toughness that we're able to stack, how potent heals can be, the fact that we have a free med kit, and then you get this Survival Link on top of you, which basically makes you invulnerable while you're still dealing full damage. Like, that's just ridiculous. And I think that from this, I infer that the Massive are not actually trying to balance PvP at this point. I think they're trying to build the rest of their game first, and they've parked PvP in like the too hard basket. You know, like, we'll come to that later. Because yeah, I mean, like, I've absolutely had some fun times doing PvP. Don't get me wrong, tons of them. In fact, like, it's been fun when those sort of random moments pop up. But I never actually go into the Dark Zone to PvP, because for me, the number one requirement in any PvP area is like balance. You know, it's why I really love like games like Overwatch or League of Legends or whatever, because they just have balance so perfectly tuned. And it's a reason why I never really liked PvP in something like World of Warcraft, because they had a huge journey to get to the point where PvP was actually balanced in that game. And it was a huge mess for many years, to be honest. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of
Are you expecting that same to happen for the Division, where it will just be a big mess for many years to come?
I don't know. I wonder. It's a really good question, because I just think that, like, you know, there's so much learning now about how you balance an MMO. Like, for instance, like with World of Warcraft, they weren't the first MMO, but they were the biggest, and they had to learn a lot of this stuff as they went. And I think now we've seen so many games contend with the kind of design choices that Blizzard and, you know, other MMOs have had to make over the years. My hope is that the Massive guys will be able to learn faster and implement faster than other games have done in the past. But I don't know. Obviously, you know, it's they're figuring this out. This is their first big title. They've certainly made a lot of mistakes along the way. That can't be argued. And I'm just hoping that maybe they'll eventually turn their attention to this and really invest in it, because it's a cool idea to think that we're going to be able to go up against people in some kind of organized way with a modicum of balance. You know, that would be, for me, the dream.
I have no problem whatsoever with people using the gear that they collected to PvP, even though that makes some people stronger than others. As long as there's not one set completely overpowered. I feel like that if you make gear inside of PvP completely balanced, then I guess what's the point of collecting the gear for a lot of people? They're just going to play PvP with whatever shitty gear they have, and it will be fine.
But that's okay, though. That's how lots of games do that, though. Lots of games
I know.
to collect
I'm just saying, I wouldn't mind if you could take your gear that you min-max so well into the PvP and use that to fight the enemies. At the end of the day, you're gonna. I don't know. I think that would be such an issue.
This is where you need that gear reset that we spoke about, right? Because I feel like for this thing, it's the problem with this, and the reason that a lot of people have a problem with the Dark Zone as well, is that if you haven't been playing, like, for example, if you've got a finely tuned like 3-2-1 set, for example, you're still putting out the most damage, then while yes, there are some counters to it, while yes, you could run with, say, you know, I saw like Marco's toughness video. I mean, yeah, there are kind of a couple of outliers, but generally speaking, if you have one of those perfect sets, you go in and you will normally be that top percentage, right? And then to anyone else that doesn't fall in line with that, they're kind of put on the outside. And I feel like that's where a fresh reset, a gear reset, where you're forced to leave everything behind, will improve things. Because what I would like to see, you know, I mean, as we mentioned earlier, the second set of gear sets have got some really interesting perks. You know, it's not just something boring like base, you know, just flat damage increase. It's like it's damage through other things. Or, you know, I really like Predator's Mark just simply because it's just 100% infinite bleed, and it's just fun to mess around with. But I feel like I don't mind if not every single gear set is perfectly balanced, but I like this kind of. I'm a big fan of sort of rock paper scissors gameplay, right? You know, if you were, let's just say, you know, ignoring for a minute, if it was like Predator is the counter to Hunters, Hunter is the counter to Tactician, or, you know, whatever it was. But like, if you have positions like that, because of course, I mean, again, it's ultimately, while yes, it would make it harder as a solo player, this is still ultimately a team game. So team composition would then suddenly go in a position where you'd say, all right, in my team, we want to run the Dark Zone today. Make sure we've got a Predator. Make sure we've got a Tactician, so we can kind of have the perfect composition. But
if you're going to do that, though, I really like the idea. I really like that idea, and I would 100% support it. But if you're going to do that, I feel like there needs to be a more visual, clear way to see what somebody else is wearing, or what kind of type of...
I agree. Yeah, I mean, some of the sets look too similar. Like, it would be nice if, like, you could tell. I mean, this is something else that I like as well. I mean, obviously, being a Monster Hunter player, it's very easy. You look at someone, you look at their armor, you know exactly where their armor's come
Fashion
from, right?
hunter.
And then, yeah, exactly. I mean, or even like Destiny to a certain extent. You know the raid gear, right? Whereas in this one, I mean, technically speaking, if you get close, you can tell what the gear set is, but they're so similar. It's in combat. It's
Maybe a
impossible to
logo,
see, right?
maybe like a logo next to their health bar. Like if you run 4P striker logo next to the health
That's
bar.
a really
Simple
cool
as that.
idea,
Yeah.
actually.
That's true.
And then you know exactly what they're running, and you know if they can counter you. It's kind of like, because everybody has these different abilities, like normal abilities and ultis, which are the survivor link, tactical link, and stuff like that. And well, you're usually in a MOBA game or in an RPG game, you kind of know what the enemies has in types of abilities, cooldowns, what they can do, so you know what to look out for. That isn't really there in the Division. Anyone can have any set, any skill, any that type of thing. I think having a health bar or having like an icon next to the health bar for the two skills and maybe the gear set that they're using would be perfect.
It's a great
That
idea.
would be amazing.
So I'm sorry to cut this. Sorry, Arekkz, to cut this conversation short. But we're running quite a little bit over time now, so I'm going to just sort of segue into our last question, which I want to really look at. So obviously we've got E3 coming up. We've got Underground soon to be released. There's a leaked date of the 28th of June, which I'm highly skeptical about, but we'll see if that comes through. That'll be on the Xbox first, apparently, and everywhere else 30 days later. So really interested to hear what you guys are looking for out of that expansion. Like, obviously there's a bit of a wish list, but maybe we could put it this way. Like, what's the number one thing that you think Underground really needs to nail? Like, what's priority number one for this next expansion pack? Breezy, did you want to maybe take us away on that one? Put you on the spot with that one.
I would like to see. Oh man, there's so many things.
Yeah.
I mean, new gear. If I had to choose one thing, it would be a repeatable, satisfying endgame content.
Yeah.
Even over gear, even if like everything stayed the same, but there was one thing that my wish list, it would be some kind of an arena, something where I could just hop in and just kill people and not have to worry about loot, not have to worry about those things. Just at the end, after it was over, 10 minutes of a slaughter fest, I got something random, It was just straight up me walking in there, everybody killed each other, nobody, we just had fun, and then some rewards were handed out based on RNG.
Yeah, RNG. And what about you, Arekkz? What do you think? What is priority number one?
I mean, again, a similar situation. There's so many things that you could ask for. But I mean, I think for me, it's showing the gradual improvement, right? So, assuming there'll be an incursion in the next one, I'd like to see that they've learned to the point where the next one has legitimate mechanics that people need to start learning, right? It's something where I feel if they can do that, then they've shown that they have actively learned from the way they are right now, and it's also like a sign that things are going in the right direction. I'm not necessarily expecting the next incursion to be exactly what we want, but if it's got some kind of component where it's like some sort of mechanic you have to learn where it's not just shoot enemies and they don't just pile shotgunners at you, I will be happy that they are going the right way.
Yep, for sure. Marco, what about you, buddy?
I don't think this is gonna make it into the next patch. But I would really like to see some sort of dungeon style with levels to go deeper and deeper into the underground. Like you have floor 1, floor 2, floor 3, that kind of stuff. How deep can you go? And the deeper you can go, the better gear you get when you die as a reward. That would be really cool. But that's awesome. Of course, not something that's going to be in there. But something that I've been thinking about that would be really awesome.
Yeah, for sure. No, a lot of people made that suggestion as well. The whole from Diablo, the greater tier rift system, which is you go as far as you can, and the rewards scale up based on that, which just works so well for the Division, given it's a looter. So yeah, that'd be totally agree with you. That'd be really awesome. For me, I think I'm probably a little bit on the boring end of the spectrum. For me, the number one thing that this patch really needs to hit is just balance, and I mean that word from two perspectives. One, around the weapons, you've got this huge awesome canvas with the weapons that have been designed. They feel great, they sound great, they look great, they're cool, but only 4 of them are really properly usable in terms of actually competitive, and I just would love to see that opened up massively. And obviously there's a weapons balance pass, and hopefully it'll be successful, but for me that's number one that I think, or equal number one. I think number two is just PvP balancing. Breezy's talked about a sort of arena where you can just battle royale it out. I would really love to see the Dark Zone balance from the perspective of
what if what if they put some sort of PvP arena into the underground?
As
You
in,
never know.
What do you mean it's the underground?
Well,
Like a new, like you talking about a new dark zone in the new area, or
No,
are you
no,
talking
no,
about
no. Like you go
an
into the
arena?
underground.
Okay, sorry,
There
yeah,
are
sure.
certain sections where you
Yeah.
can play like deathmatch games, where the story of the game is that you have to risk your life in the fight versus other agents or something for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
best gear. I mean, what if, I'm
Sure.
just throwing some ideas here.
Yeah, and that's it. And you know it
I
has
would
to
love-
come one
yeah.
day. It has to come. Like, there's no way the developers are looking at this and thinking, no,
Oh, yeah.
we don't want an arena-style activity for our game. It's got to be coming one day.
Well,
But
it's something else at like a launch, like when they kind of used to do this podcast, speaking to like Hamish and those guys about like I would love to see like it's a perfect game for a battle royale kind of setup, right? I would say it would be amazing to see like if they had like an additional dark zone where you could like you have to get like a key each day, like you get given a key, like a daily key that allows you to enter DZ07 or something, and then you go in there and you've got to like take out everyone else, and when you're dead, you're out for 24 hours. You can't come back until tomorrow, and if you're the last person alive, you have like I don't know a massive treasure room of like 50 greens or something.
that would be awesome.
I mean, it
That'd be super
it
cool.
suits the kind of setting. So.
It does. Yeah, look, there's a lot that can be done, and but I think the starting point of all of that though is just balancing PvP in terms of abilities and signatures and all that stuff, because you could add all of that new stuff to it, but you're still going to be going up against Survival Link, you're still going to be going up against Shock Turret, all these sorts of things that just aren't implemented correctly right now. So I think that's it for me. But look, I think that's probably it. Unless there's any final words from you guys before we finish up. There's nothing else
I don't want to torture you any longer. It's already been an hour.
We started this conversation at the beginning. Marco's like, I don't know, man. An hour? We probably only talk for about 20 minutes, right? I don't know if they'll go for an hour. Like an hour and 10, 15 minutes later, here we are. So look, thank you so much, guys, for joining this conversation. It's been really fantastic. Really appreciated all of your insights. I'm sure that we'll be having more conversations like this in the future. We did one for patch 1.1. This is the patch 1.2. Patch 1.3, absolutely, you can expect there's going to be one for that as well. The guys and I are going to talk about how we sort of syndicate or get this show out on different channels. So stay tuned for news on that. But for now, thanks very much for listening. Really appreciate it. Take good care, guys, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.